In the year 1680 CE, the great Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj passed away. Now Aurangzeb thought that this was his opportunity to capture the Maratha Empire. Hence, he focused all of his energies to take over the territories that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj had won. But what he had not factored in was that Sambhaji Maharaj would be more than a handful for him. As a matter of fact, Aurangzeb's own son Akbar also defected to Sambhaji's camp, asking for refuge and help to overthrow his father. Left with no choice, Aurangzeb decided to himself come to the Deccan and lead the charge against Sambhaji Maharaj. He made Aurangabad his base, which was called Devgiri at that time, which he renamed as Aurangabad after himself, and started his campaign in 1682 against the Maratha Empire. But this story is not about his campaign against Sambhaji Maharaj. It is about something which he did while he was in Devgiri at that point in time, or what is today known as Sambhajinagar. Now, Aurangzeb had this propensity where he was a bigot of the first order. His favorite pastime was to demolish temples, desecrate the idols, and have them buried under the ground so that people would walk over the idols. The idea being that he wanted to promote other religions over Hinduism. Obviously, when he saw the magnificent Kailasa temple, it hurt him where it hurts the most. And he figured that the first and foremost thing I will do is deploy people to destroy this temple. His objective was very clear. I cannot let this massive and magnificent symbol of Indian architecture or Hindu architecture to remain standing while I am the king. So Aurangzeb deployed anywhere between 1500 or 1000 to 5000 soldiers to destroy the Kailasa cave temples. There are different versions of the number of soldiers he deploys. What matters is that there were at least 1000, probably 5000 soldiers over a period of 3 years who tried to destroy the temple. But this was easier said than done. Because as we mentioned in the game, there were almost 200,000 tons of rock that would have to be excavated for creating the Kailasa cave temple. So you can imagine how magnificent and how huge the structure was. When these soldiers came in to destroy it, they were completely besieged with superstitions. They thought that the cave or the temple is made with magical rocks, and if they try to destroy it, then they will themselves be destroyed. So it took a lot of convincing and threatening from the commanders before the ordinary soldier even attempted to try destroying the temples. And there are many stories of the obstacles they faced. One of the more popular ones is that when they started demolishing the temple, the area was hit with a massive earthquake. It was so bad that a lot of people lost their lives, and the soldiers completely refused to touch the temple again. Of course, the result of this earthquake was that the Kailasa cave temple was completely unharmed, but the people trying to destroy it were scared out of their wits. I've already mentioned that they had this superstitious belief that the temple is made with magical stones because they couldn't fathom how else can something like this so grand and so great be constructed by humans. So they were obviously scared of touching it. Irrespective, being soldiers, they had no choice but to follow the orders, so they did what Aurangzeb bid them to do, which is try and destroy the temple. It took these guys 3 whole years, doing nothing every day from morning to evening, but going with hammer, chisel, spear and whatever other implements they can find to try and destroy the temple. But other than defacing a few idols, they could accomplish nothing. Meanwhile, Aurangzeb was facing troubles of his own. The venerable Sikh gurus in the north had started hitting back at the Mughals because of the atrocities that they were committing on the local Hindu population, and he was facing trouble from there. In the east, his forces were trying to take over the Ahom kingdom of Assam, and we all know, or I will tell you in one of our subsequent books, the story of the great Lachit Borpukhan and how he pushed back the Mughal forces once and forever. And of course, down south, the Marathas were themselves proving to be more than a handful for the Mughal forces. So, under attack from different directions, his own son having defected, Aurangzeb realized that he just doesn't have the time or the resources to sit and demolish the Kailasa cave temple. Left with no choice, very sadly, he had to pull his troops back. Of course, there are a lot of rumors floating around that Aurangzeb probably realized that, I need to be benevolent and not destroy the temple, but that is utter rubbish. During Aurangzeb's reign, the only thing that he directly did was destroy temples and try and replace them with mosques. If there were any temples made at that time, it was made by his subordinate Rajput kings in their kingdom. For instance, there was Mirza Raja Jai Singh, his son Raja Ram Singh, who had a lot of temples built, but that was in Rajputana and other territories that they were in control of. They were ruling under the blessings of the Mughal emperor, but the Mughal emperor could not, in this case Aurangzeb or prior to him Shah Jahan, could not mess with these powerful Rajput princes because they knew that these guys had an army strong enough to not just challenge but perhaps even defeat the Mughal forces. So they turned a blind eye when the Rajput kings who were serving under them built temples, but they themselves never commissioned a single temple to be built. So that's a story of how Aurangzeb failed miserably in destroying the Kailasa cave temple, and other than defacing a few statues, there is nothing that he could achieve. Which is a great blessing, because today you and I can go to Sambhajinagar and see this beautiful, magnificent example of Hindu architecture. Now let's discuss a little about the people who built the Kailasa cave temple. The Archaeological Survey of India has put up a plaque at the temple that says that the Rashtrakuta dynasty made this about 2000 years back, which is a little after the pyramids were built. We don't know whether that's true or not, but let's look at what the facts are. This is a monolithic cave structure. What that means is that the entire structure has been carved out of a single rock. Just to understand what that means, let me give you an idea about the scale of the Kailasa cave temple. It is about 100 feet tall, which is a little over a 3-story building, 300 feet by 175 feet in length and width. Imagine a single rock which is as big as that. That's not a rock, that's a mountain. So there were people who carved this temple out of that mountain. Typically, when you make a building, you find a flat piece of land, or you make a flat piece of land, you dig a foundation, and then you bring bricks or stones or concrete or whatever building material, and you build the structure from ground up. The Kailasa cave temple is carved top down, which means whoever was the architect or the designer of this beautiful structure, they took a look at the mountain and visualized what the temple would be like. They had precise and exact measurements of what needs to be carved where and how, because there was no scope for error. If you make a mistake while you're building something, you can always demolish it and build it again. But if you're carving down from a single rock, you can't afford mistakes, because you can't throw that rock away. Everything is connected to everything else. That is the sheer scale of the task that was accomplished. And it is a magnificent task that's been accomplished, because every single square inch of the temple structure or the cave structure has got intricate carvings on it. When you look at it from front, it looks like the entire thing is a massive chariot which is borne on the backs of huge, powerful elephants. Along the sides, there are small and very detailed carvings that play out the epics like the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and also the Puranas. And the main temple itself has a shivling where prayers have been offered for thousands of years before it was abandoned after after Aurangzeb tried to demolish the structure. Now let's go back to who built this temple. Let's assume it was the Rashtrakutas. To build a temple or to build a cave structure of this magnitude, experts and engineers estimate that about 200,000 or 2 lakh tons of rock would have to be excavated. Even if it took them, let's say, 20 years to build it, which is what the Archaeological Survey of India says, they would on an average have to take out 20,000 tons of rock periodically. Can you imagine how much rock that is? And where would all that rock have gone? Because for a 100-kilometer radius surrounding the Kailasa cave temple, there is no evidence of any rocks coming out from the excavation. Secondly, if you visit the structure, and I really suggest that you should, you will find that there are a lot of holes in the ground. Suddenly there is a hole at the culvert between the wall and the ground, and it's disappearing somewhere, or it is covered up, which makes you wonder what these are. Well, the fact is that these are either holes which have been created or tunnels which have been bored down through this solid rock for air to go down to the subterranean chambers or for water to go down to the subterranean chambers. Another interesting fact is if you go into into one of the main temples or any of the main temples which has got a shivling, like any Hindu temple which has got a shivling in it, there is an offering, a continual offering of water or milk which is poured on the shivling. Typically this flows out and it is drained out outside the temple where it is either collected or it flows away. Interestingly, in the Kailasa Cave temple, the water flows out, but it doesn't emerge anywhere. No one knows where that water goes. The only logical explanation is that the water is going to subterranean chambers, which means that the entire structure is standing on a massive network of subterranean chambers, which was carved out of solid basalt rock, God knows how many thousands of years back. Now, basalt is one of the hardest rocks to carve. Unlike rocks like, let's say, a sandstone or any other softer rock which is easier to work with, this rock is tremendously difficult. And no matter how many years back this was constructed, just try to visualize people working with just a chisel and a hammer, how long it would have taken them to build. It's something which is not possible for one human or an army of humans to build during their individual lifetime, which means it would have to have been carved over multiple generations. Which means that the vision that was originally shared by the architect who visualized the temple had to be carried down from generation to generation before the structure was created. Isn't that a magnificent and beautiful story? And we are blessed that a structure like this exists in our